Ladies and gentlemen, listeners, lovers, and friends, welcome back to the Prodcast at Two Ticks and the Dog Productions. I am your host, Jim Fogarty. Welcome back to another episode. We are super pumped. Today we have a friend of mine. He's interviewed me a few times. We got to be friends over that process. He is my favorite entertainment writer. Yes, he is the one and only Andy Gray from the Warren Tribune Chronicle. He has a section called Gray Areas. You can find him on Facebook and other places, but he is the guy who has made the ticket a household word here in Trumbull County, Ohio. He's interviewed some amazingly famous people, both musically and artistically, visual arts and movies. And so it's going to be a great show, but we got to take care of some business first. Our number one sponsor today is the one and only Modern Methods Brewery. What? Modern Methods? What is that? You're interested? You're from outside of the area? We want you to visit modernmethodbrew.com. Click and make sure you're 21 because we don't advocate anyone underage consuming any type of alcoholic beverage. And if you do go to Modern Methods, please drive safely. The beers are tasty, but they are also a little on the strong side, which is why we like them. So if you like a good beer, a good craft beer, with locally sourced materials, Adam Keck and his team have created some amazing flavors. The Darlene being my favorite. You've heard about me talk about that before. But there's Hefeweizens like the Scrappy German, and there's some other seasonal stuff that's coming out after you have a few Modern Methods. And you wake up in the morning and you might be a little slower in the morning. What do you think we want you to do? Okay, we want you to biohacktomorrow.com. And at biohacktomorrow.com is a product that I use called Axio. And you can buy it right from this site, biohacktomorrow.com. Axio is kind of an all-day brain performance enhancer. Gives you sustained energy. You get an improved mood. It's got some L-theanine in it. You get some enhanced concentration and focus. And it doesn't help you. It doesn't treat a hangover if you should have too many Modern Methods, which please don't. Drink responsibly. But it does. It does kind of dial you in. Your focus kind of dials in. And so, and it'll put you in a better mood by checking out Axio. It's got great flavors. They got decaf and caffeinated. It comes in grapefruit and red raspberry and sour cherry and green grape and dragon fruit. And they've got tons of good stuff over there. So if you're having Modern Methods today or tonight, you might want to biohacktomorrow.com and get yourself some Axio. Without further ado, here is the one and only Andy Gray. Follow that guideline.
That's true.
All right, I'll count us down. 3, 2, 1. Andy Gray, welcome to the Prodcast.
Thank you.
Yes. I'm so excited to have you for many, many reasons. I feel like I always say I'm excited to have guests, but I actually am excited to have them, especially when you have like relationships with people, which started as professional kind of a deal and then grew into, I consider you a friend. Are we friends?
I agree.
Me
I think
and Andy
so.
are friends, man. I'm friends with Andy Gray, y'all.
Well, we are now. We'll see what it is at the end of the podcast.
Andy is a 30-year veteran.
35 years in June.
Wow. 35 years at the Warren Tribune Chronicle?
Correct.
Did you start off anywhere beforehand?
Not, but that's where I started after I graduated from college. I worked for the Cincinnati Enquirer as a stringer my senior year. I worked summers at the Sandusky Register in the Middletown Journal where I grew up. But that was my first full-time job in newspapers after I graduated from college. I started there a month after I graduated.
For the listeners, stringer, what is it? That's like you follow along. You
get paid by the story.
Yep.
Yeah, I covered my senior year at Miami University. I kind of covered what happened at Miami for the Cincinnati Enquirer. Mostly when they had guest speakers and that kind of thing. It was more feature-y stuff. There wasn't a whole lot of, they didn't necessarily have me doing news stories of like Board of Trustees meetings and that kind of thing. But
how did you get into, did you study journalism at Miami U?
More or less. I mean, Miami does not have at least at the time, did not have a journalism program. I was technically an English major type 5, which meant an English major with a journalism concentration. But it was, I knew from about the age of 7 or 8 that newspapers is what I wanted to do. So it's like, I don't remember when I was a kid growing up in like the 70s that we put as much effort into like where we were going to go to school as kids do now. It's like they make all the visits and everything. Miami was a half hour from where I grew up. It was a school with a good reputation. They offered me a little money. My best friend was going there. I was like, yeah, sure, let's go here.
Did you write for the school newspaper, like in high school or middle school?
Middle school, high school. The Middletown Journal where I grew up had a teen page that ran on Mondays that I also wrote for and did a lot of work for. And I got a scholarship from them as well.
You've always been a artist. So we'd always talk about art. Like one of our first times talking about it, Brandon and I were saying, well, art is, people think about art, they think about, paintings on the wall. We're surrounded with Barry Berkey's paintings and Dom Nicastro's. And like they think about visual art painting, but writing is such a great art. And journalism, like we talked with Blank about advertising being kind of an offshoot of art, journalism is its own discipline and its own art. Was it always journalism, or was it always reporting, like in a Stringer sense, or was it, I want to write creatively or write,
Newspapers was kind of like my first interest. My father was the advertising director for the newspaper where I grew up.
Right on.
And he worked late a lot of Monday nights, and sometimes he'd take me into the office with him, and I'd just play on the typewriters while he did what he had to do. And this was back in the days when, like now everything comes over the computer, like the Associated Press stories. But there used to be like a machine in a room that just spit out copy on paper, like these reams of paper that would put stories, and someone would have to type them in to appear in next day's paper. And I remember sitting in the sports room when I was probably like 7, 8 years old and seeing, like, come across on the AP machine that the Cincinnati Reds, who were my favorite team at the time, had just hired someone who as like their manager for one of the minor league clubs that I had like a baseball card of as a kid. And the fact that like I knew now what everyone else was going to read in the paper tomorrow, I thought was really cool. And just the idea of like knowing it first and getting to tell people things that they would be interested in kind of appealed to me. And
wasn't there a TV show like that, Supernatural or something? You got today's news tomorrow.
Oh yeah, the coach from Friday Night Lights was in it. I can't remember the first edition, or I can't remember. I know the show you're talking about, but I can't think of the name of it.
So you get out of Miami, you start at the Tribune 35 years ago in June. Congratulations. Happy early anniversary. We're a couple months away. I remember you only as like writing entertainment. Did you ever do other?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
When I started out, I covered, I think, Cortland my first couple months. Then I ended up working as a police reporter primarily for like the southern tier of the county, like Niles, Girard, Hubbard, Liberty, Newton Falls. Then became the police and courts reporter in 1985, the week after Raymond Fife was murdered.
Oh, geez.
I covered Danny Lee Hill and Tim Combs' trials. I think Tim Combs was sentenced either on a Friday or a Monday, and that Tuesday is when the Chucky Lorraine killed the Montgomerys on the west side. So I went right from one capital murder case to another capital murder case.
So for anyone that's listening from outside of the area, the Raymond Fife case Raymond was 8 or
12.
10, 12. Oh, geez. Yeah. 12 years old. He was walking to or from Boy Scouts.
Going to a Boy Scout meeting.
Yeah. And two men, Danny Lee Hill and Timothy
Combs.
Timothy Combs.
Combs was only 17 at the time. That's why he's not on death row.
Yeah.
He just recently died in prison.
Yeah. And so they tortured. It's a ghastly crime that has resonated in this community till now because Danny Lee Hill is still in appeals and Raymond Fife's father passed away several years ago and never really, got to kind of see justice.
Right.
And his mother, who worked in the courts, she just recently retired, Miriam Fife, who's been an advocate for victims. It's terrible. I'm talking about it. I'm kind of like getting emotional thinking about it because I remember that specific
That's what everyone
time.
feels about it in this area.
It's terrible.
Don't look it up out there.
Yeah.
Don't even have to look up the story.
Right. And so, so you covered that. That was your...
Yeah. I was 23 years old. I mean, frankly, it was probably easier because I was so young. Because I mean, before I had kids, before I was married. It was just you'd spend all day in court. When they took a break, you were trying to write because at that point we were an afternoon paper. So they're right there was a copy desk there, and you put out an edition that went to print at 1 o'clock in the afternoon.
Oh wow!
That was the home delivery edition. So whatever happened at lunchtime, while everyone else went to lunch, you went back to the office and topped off the story and did it for that day. That night after testimony finished, you kind of shape things up, and then you'd have to put a new lead on the story for the next morning for whoever the first witness was that day.
Man, that's funny to think about that. Not that case, obviously, but funny to think about the deadlines and the print aspect of it back then. Now a lot of stuff is like, I can't remember, Joe Biden announced, and then 1 a.m. was the story in the Tribune. They published it 1 a.m. in the morning because it was probably whatever he announced was maybe.
Yeah, because our copy desk is still there until about 1:30 in the morning to get out the next day's paper. It goes to press about 1:30.
Yeah, but back then it was an afternoon. It was an afternoon edition.
Yeah, there was no one there. I mean, there might be one reporter there in the evening who had to cover a meeting, but then people showed up at 5:30, 6 o'clock in the mornings when the copy desk came in to lay out the next day's paper, or lay out that day's paper.
My wife is a social worker at Children's Services, and she sees some of the worst, the worst of the worst of people, but she also gets to kind of save children and helps them find better homes and pulls them out of, bad situations. And I always tease her. She'll come and tell me these stories about abuse and things of that nature. And I say, when we first started dating, I said, please stop telling me this stuff because I live in the fantasy world. So at one point, Andy goes from being this court reporter and covering some gruesome, the Montgomery murder, and before that, the Raymond Fife case. And then when did you transition into fantasy world and start that? Because that's how I know you. I know Andy as being the entertainment writer and writing film reviews and music reviews and television reviews and features in the ticket of local shows that are coming in. And now you have your own space. Yeah. When did that first start, though?
It was always kind of the goal where I was going for. You figure even at that time, when the Tribune, we had maybe 15 reporters, but there was only one entertainment job. I mean, those jobs are rare, and they tend to get filled in-house, so they're tough to get. So that's why when I came out of school, I decided I simply want to get a job in newspapers, see if I can kind of work my way that direction. I certainly let my interests be known to the editors, and there were certainly things over that stretch when I was doing other beats that I got thrown. There was a time when Frank Kenley, who was John Kenley's brother-in-law by marriage, who wasn't really a Kenley, he just adopted a name and tried to do a season of shows out of Packard. He brought in Donnie Marie Osmond for something and a couple other shows. I got sent to go to the press conference to cover Donnie Marie Osmond. I talked him into letting me cover Bruce Springsteen at the Stadium when he played there in 85. But in 87, the woman who was doing the entertainment section at the time, which primarily covered craft shows, had to go on medical leave. The editor asked and was going to be off for 6 weeks, said, I want you to take care of the entertainment section while she's off. At that point, it was called Weekend Plus. And when she came back, Jerry said, okay, she's going to do something else and you're just going to stay here.
Nice.
Right.
Did you feel bad about it when she came back? Was she like, and that Andy Gray, I can't stand him. He took my job. It's kind of bitter. Maybe it's not bittersweet, but it's nice for you because dude's like, you're doing a great job. You're staying here.
Yeah.
She could have maybe said, finally, I don't have to make any more craft stories.
Good point.
Yeah. I don't think she was brokenhearted to not have to do it. I'm sure she probably wasn't thrilled but it's not like they gave her a terrible beat when she came back. She was worked on the feature staff at that point after.
Were you excited about it when you?
Oh yeah, I was thrilled, and because I was essentially given kind of free rein to shape the beat how I wanted, and frankly, I've gotten lucky for most of the time I've been there that as long as no one was bothering the bosses saying, well, why didn't Andy cover this? They didn't really care what else I covered. So that's kind of how the movie review started. It was a great time. It's like that was about the time my wife, the woman that became my wife, and I hadn't been dating that long, and so I could go review shows at Blossom or Richfield Coliseum and get
Bring her
tickets.
along,
It's one of the rare jobs where not only do you get free tickets for things, but you essentially got to bring a date because in most cases you got 2 tickets for whatever you were covering.
That's awesome.
So. and you're getting paid to do something you love and catch a show and have a cheap, not a cheap date, but
I'm getting a better ticket than I could ever afford to buy. And
a lot of press passes for the back too. Like, did you get to meet a lot of the people in the back, or they at least get you close enough?
Not real. I mean, it's one of those things where it's like they used to get backstage passes with things, and most of the times I wouldn't use them just because it's an awkward situation.
Is it like Almost Famous? That's like a faux pas.
Or you're not there.
You're not.
They're like, no, don't fraternize with the rock stars. They want to be your friends so that you write a great glowing story about them. Or whatever.
No, it's more just a case of, I mean, they're kind of cattle calls. They're mostly like for fans. It's like you're there in a professional setting. I don't like to. Only once in my life have I gotten autographs at something I was covering, and that was when they did the groundbreaking for the Rock Hall induction or the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame in Cleveland. They weren't letting us talk to anyone, so I figured, well, technically I'm not interviewing these people, but I'm like as close as I am to you, to Chuck Berry and Pete Townsend.
Oh, wow.
Who I got to sign the folder of the press kit.
That's freaking awesome.
That's cool.
But I know once, because remember when they used to do a Celebration on the Square?
Yeah.
The Ohio Ballet would come and perform on a stage in downtown Warren. And the one year to try to bring out a non-dance audience, I got Lynn Swann involved with it. And I grew up a Steelers fan.
Pittsburgh Steeler, great, yeah.
I got sent to Pittsburgh to go interview Lynn Swann beforehand to talk, so he could talk about why he liked dance. And
did he dance? Was he performing? Or
he
was that
studied some dance and used it to kind of help him with his
when he was a receiver.
As a receiver. Yeah. And I had the football card from 1977 in my shirt pocket the whole time. I'm going, it's like, no, I can't do it. I didn't ask for the autograph that time. But
we went one time to do a PSA for traumatic brain injury, TBI.com. I can't remember exactly what the thing was for. It was actually in conjunction with a documentary we were working on, and we got to meet. I'm not a Steelers fan, but the guy, the on-air talent, the camera talent was Rocky Blyer.
Oh yeah.
And so there's Rocky, and my one of my best friends is a massive Steelers fan, which when we were at Bowling Green, we roomed together for 2 years. He's a Steelers fan. I'm a Browns fan. So, when those games came, we were always smack talking each other. But he said we had him using a football. We picked a football up on the way the night before so that Rocky could kind of talk with the football while he was making this point about TBI. And so I said, when it was all done, I said, hey, will you sign this football to my friends? So my buddy Steve Zolchek, shout out. He signed it. And when we left Pittsburgh, we came home, I went right to his trophy. He owns a trophy shop. And I went right to his trophy shop, and I was like, hey, man, I got this thing for you. And he was a huge Rocky Blyer fan, Pittsburgh and all that stuff. And he was like, oh, man, this is awesome. So the perks of kind of sometimes the production life, if you will, is kind of fun. When you started that, though, was that always something you were interested in, like movies and film or movies and music and things of that nature?
Oh yeah, because I know my mom says I taught myself to read when I was 3 so I could read the TV guide.
What? Yeah, we got a savant, Andy Gray, Mensa smart.
Yeah, but it was
I learned card on you.
I learned to read so I knew when the cartoons would be on. I mean, it was.
What was your favorite cartoons growing up?
I liked Mighty Mouse a lot.
Yeah,
and also then loved the Ralph Bakshi ones that came back when he did it in the 80s. That were just insane. The guy did Fritz the Cat. And the R-rated animation from the 70s. They hired to do a season of Mighty Mouse in the early 80s, and there's scenes where he's smelling crushed flowers that look a lot like cocaine and stuff. And it's just running on Saturday mornings. But
that's why Mighty Mouse was so mighty.
Yeah.
Mighty Mouse is here to save the day. He's on cocaine.
I like that question Jim asked, what was your favorite cartoon back in the day? But as a new father, and you said that you were a father as well, or you are a father as well, I'm in that new part where I had my favorites, now I have to learn new favorites.
Yeah.
So, Bubble Guppies and stuff, you got to really tackle the cartoons that are fun nowadays too.
Well, see, that was like my older daughter's 26, and so when she was too young to really understand what was going on, she used to sit and watch Simpsons with me. And when Anna was like a year old, 18 months old, you could go to her and say, Anna, what does Homer Simpson say? And she'd go, oh, perfect intonation and everything. Matter of fact, we even there's an artist in Youngstown, Chris Yambar, who did art for the comic books and did some writing, or he wrote for the comic books. He brought in Bill Morrison, who was kind of like about number 3, number 4 in Matt Groening's company as far as working with the Simpsons. They did a series of like kids books. There's like a book to like teach a kid their numbers and their letters, only it's got like Marge and Homer and them doing, or like the characters that are covering things. And he gave me a set of those when he was in town doing a card show or something that Anna used when she was a little kid to learn to read. And this is one of the things, and as parents that, if you guys are young enough that you grew up with pretty much cable your whole lives, but like say when I was a kid, I grew up with 3 channels.
Poor kid. No, I didn't have cable.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, see,
not poor
we had
kid,
a rotary, rotary dial.
I had rotary dial too. Yeah.
Then maybe you'll agree with this because I've already made this argument on more than one occasion that I think that one of the terrible things about the number of options that we have today is that kids can always find something on television that will talk down to them. Like when I was 9 years old, or when I was 10 years old, my favorite TV show was MASH.
Yeah.
I remember watching All in the Family, the very first season that came on, and which I was probably too young to fully grasp everything that was in that show, but I grasped enough of it. And frankly, I think MASH probably did as much to shape my sensibility as some more highfalutin examples might be, whereas like my kids can always find a Disney Channel show where like the only thing comes down to is like what food product or the main character is going to end up covered in.
Yeah.
And I think the fact that I got exposed to stuff that I maybe had to kind of like
adult.
Yeah, got pushed a bit that I wasn't.
Well, in your time, cartoons were only a few hours a week. Right?
Yeah, Saturday morning was a big deal.
Yes.
I mean,
one Saturday morning. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, you sat down and waited for your Schoolhouse Rock and Super Friends and those things.
And you came home and you knew you had a short amount of time before the news came on, like 2:30, 3 o'clock. You'd go to certain stations and you'd watch your G.I. Joe and your Transformers or whatever else was on, and then it was done. Now, and it's terrible because my son's an only child. I'm trying not to spoil him, but he's like, Dad, I want to watch my shows. And he could literally watch TV from the moment he wakes up until the moment he goes to sleep. And it's filled with, and we're out of the Bubble Guppy stages now, but it's filled with whatever he wants. He can go to Netflix and watch Disney stuff or superhero stuff, or he can get, Legos and all that other crazy stuff.
Or you've got
those were the days. You're saying All in the Family. I am curious about so when you started reviewing movies and music, like you said that I'm having struggling putting it out. Maybe I should take a sip of beer. Hey, Salud, Modern Methods. Here's your shout out. We're drinking the Darlene again. I'm trying to label it as the Darlene. I keep saying the as in the Ohio State University. It's Darlene. Shout out to Brandon too. Brandon, thank you.
Yes.
Brandon, thank you for Brandon got this growler as a gift, and appreciate it because now we're gonna wet our whistles and maybe I can have actually a semblance of a thought come out of my mind. When you started to write reviews for shows or started to cover shows, you had to shift, right, from just strictly reporting to now putting your slant or spin on it. Was that difficult, or was it?
Not really, because I hadn't been doing that kind of stuff at the paper. It was something that I did, like starting in middle school. I was doing movie reviews for our middle school paper. I was.
It was like coming home.
Miami didn't technically have a film. They started a film minor the year after I graduated, but I had all of. If it had existed when I was there, I would have graduated with a film minor. So it was always like kind of like where I wanted to kind of push things towards, and was lucky to have bosses that let me do it.
Man, what a serendipitous experience to have those stars kind of align in there. I knew we were kindred spirits. Andy is a Mac guy, graduated from Miami, I'm BG, and with film, and that's actually how we met. Was Waxing Gibbous, and Andy has done. This is kind of good. I'm glad I brought this up. Is Andy has been a great proponent and propeller of local talent into, the limelight, for lack of better terms, and has really been helped beacon local guys out, and kind of gave, if someone was doing something, he would give them, a spin in the paper, an article in the paper. And that's really awesome because like a lot of local, papers are, I know the paper business has changed over the years, but like Warren and Youngstown were at one time bigger markets 20, 30 years ago. They're different. Obviously all industries change, but you were always very open to that. So I appreciate that. And I know a lot of other people, Eric Murphy, we mentioned him a couple times on the show. I said, he had asked the other night, I was talking to him. He goes, "Hey, who's coming on next?" I said, "Well, actually, Andy Gray, I think is going to be on next week." He was like, "Dude, love Andy Gray." I go, "Me too, man." And, he harkens those same sentiments. And so I think that's really cool. And for a lot of bands too, like, didn't you do, Brandon, like the Region Rock show and you covered some of that with guys?
No, I didn't do that, but I was in bands, and it was nice to have an outlet for, to get your band schedules out there, to get reviews, on certain things. So,
and if anything, I think I've gotten better at it, in part out of necessity, because I think that the market has changed. I mean, the way that newspapers are going to survive in the 21st century is to get more local. Because, I mean, it's like when you were younger, you think, oh, I'm the biggest, in my case, like Neil Young fan in the world. When the internet came along, you realize, there's 1,000 guys who are like, must think about Neil Young 24/7. Because I don't know, I'm nowhere close to these guys. And so it's that way. We're like, I know we talked before we went on the air about Game of Thrones, that if you want to know about Game of Thrones, you can find 50 blogs that are going to like analyze line by line every single episode of that. Whereas what the guy in Warren, Ohio has to say in the newspaper, who's got to write about 50 different things over the course of a month, instead of being obsessed with Game of Thrones, it's like, I'm not going to be your go-to source for Game of Thrones.
Right.
But no one else is writing about, say, a real thriving music scene right now in the Trumbull and Mahoning counties, with bands like acts like Demos Papademos and J.D. Iker and the Vindies and groups like that are really kind of making a regional name for themselves.
Yeah,
right.
And that's where you can make a difference and make an impact. I mean, what I have to say about Bruce Springsteen isn't going to make a whole lot of difference in the greater scheme of things, but we can make a difference and attract a readership by focusing hyper-locally.
Before Gray, I would read, obviously, the great Siskel and Ebert, Leonard Maltin. There's a whole bunch of, people who reviewed. And over time, now I'll call Andy or text Andy from time to time and be like, "Hey, what did you think about whatever this particular movie was?" And we'll compare notes, which I think is a great thing, because you have covered so much and you have been exposed to so much. I think that's a thing that a lot of times artists discount, or we as society discount, like, oh, I went to this marketing seminar last year, and they said, people who are really into content creation are good at it. Well, the one common thread, or there's a couple common threads, but the one common thread is the consumerism aspect. They are consuming content all the time, and you are consuming local music, regional music, national music, the films, same way, different art, the same way. So you've really been exposed to so much that your taste is now, I think, like hyper refined in a way.
Right.
Do you ever feel that way? Like you have a certain responsibility to get like, I don't want to put too much pressure.
35 years in, if it says Andy Gray, that's an awesome thing.
Yeah, right, exactly.
And one thing
I think that's a good point. It holds more weight.
Yeah.
Like your review holds more weight.
Certainly, you're drawing on what you've experienced in the past, and you hope to kind of use that as a frame of reference. I mean, it can have like a plus side and a minus side. I mean, it's simply because they have a smaller staff at the paper. They've got other things they want me doing. I don't do as many movie reviews as I used to do. And at the time that first happened, I thought I wasn't fond of the decision. But it was also at a time when I felt like every movie I saw, even the decent ones, were simply reminding me of like kind of a pale imitation of something I'd seen 20 years before. And stepping away, I mean, so I think that there's a point where maybe you do feel that it's like not necessarily that you've seen it all, but that you start kind of looking at things through the rose-colored glasses of the past, rather than looking at what you're seeing today. And you don't need to like just read every week. It's like, well, this is good, but it's not as good as such and such, which you clearly borrowed from. And
right. Did you ever feel, because you had to put out and you're limited in space, did you ever feel like you had, like you wished like you had more space to write deeper? Like I'm asking because I'm truly curious, but I sense it. Like I always, like when I talk to you, off record, or when we're just shooting the proverbial shit on movies and stuff, because I'm a film nerd, and I feel like you are too. And I say that with loving, because I'm a film nerd. Like there's maybe more Francois Truffaut, more like Cahiers de Cinema type style criticism, but because you're limited in the newspaper space, that it's not expanded upon. Do you ever feel that way?
Well, certainly you have to know your audience. I mean, I'm not writing for film comment.
Yeah, good point.
So you can't. I mean, you want to kind of. I say I always would rather push someone towards something I think they would love rather than tear something down.
Yeah.
But with that in mind, you have to realize the audience that you're writing for. This is kind of tangential to your point, but I've always said it's like one of the best things about my job is that I get to do a little bit of everything. I could get to like most of the big movies that I wanted to see. I get to see the big touring productions that come through Cleveland. I get to see a lot of the biggest names in music that come through the area. I get to see the art that goes to the Butler, goes to Cleveland Museum of Art, some of those kind of things as well. The worst thing about my job is that I have to do a little bit of everything. I mean, there's a part of me that would love to just be like, do nothing but write about movies 24/7, see every single thing that comes out, try to do more analysis, think pieces, whatever, look for trends, that kind of thing. Where it's just that's not the job. I mean, I've kind of, being a baseball guy, there's like there was an infielder played for the St. Louis Cardinals. He was Jose Akendo, who could play all nine positions over the course of his career. I mean, and like there are days it's like, you know what? There are better film critics than me, but no film critic knows more about music than I do. Or no one writing about art can also write about as well about Bruce Springsteen as I do. And so it's trying to like do the best you can over as broad a swath of topics that you're required to write about.
So I got to ask you this question because my son and I just went to see Tuesday. I didn't get him out of school early for the movie, but I got out of work early and I went to picked him up and we went to see Captain Marvel because I'm a nerd and my son loves that stuff. Have you seen Captain Marvel yet?
I have not.
Oh man. Well, then I'll put this to you. You're planning on seeing it? Maybe, maybe not. Doesn't look like it. You're like, You know what?
Aren't you going to see Avengers Endgame? Maybe, maybe not. Doesn't look like it. You're like, ah. You know what? Aren't you going to see Avengers Endgame? Maybe, maybe not. Doesn't look like it. You're like, ah. You know what? Aren't you going to see Avengers Endgame? Maybe, maybe not. Doesn't look like it. You're like, ah. I didn't see the last one.
Oh man! All right, shot that totally.
Well,
out
see,
of
part
water.
of again, it came down to it's like those movies are such a pain to review because it's like they're such a built-in audience. It almost felt futile. It got to the point, and so when they quit having me do them, it was like and Associated Press send those are the kind of reviews that I always get in plenty of time to have them run before the show goes. It's like, yeah, you know what? I still haven't seen Black Panther, which I really want to see, but I like the last few Marvel movies. I just have not caught up with. I don't. It's not that I disliked most of the ones before it, but it was just they're the kind of things that it's better to see in a theater. And since I wasn't
Yeah, for sure.
getting around to seeing them at the press screenings, that I just never made the effort. And my daughter even owns Black Panther. It's been sitting in my house for a year, and I just
It's on Netflix too now.
yeah.
Netflix has Black Panther and which I just watched last night as background fodder while I was writing a radio spot is Thor Ragnarok. Have you seen that?
I have not.
It is super cool. You will.
That's what I've heard because
it might be the best one.
Yeah.
It's super fun. It's like Flash Gordon of the 80s, not the Buster Crab Flash Gordon, the Sam, whatever his name is. Sam, what's Sam's name from Ted, Sam? There you go. Look, Flash Gordon, the 1980, the Dino De Laurentiis Flash Gordon. It's like that combined with someone who loved Led Zeppelin and mixed in Star Wars and pumped in like Thor and this, kind of Game of Thrones-y thing. Well, I'll say this anyways. I'm going to go with it anyways just because I don't want to waste the Captain Marvel reference. But there has been, have you read any like the commentary about it, the reviews about it? There's a little bit of a spin. She's a female, obviously, like the feminism and the liberalism and, they're bringing in like immigration and just these different things. I thought it was very interesting, and if you see it, maybe we'll have another beer at Modern Methods sometimes and talk about it. Have you seen it, Brandon? Captain Marvel?
Not yet.
Mia, have you seen Captain Marvel? No?
I kind of want to.
Mia is here with us today, too. When we'll in next episode, you'll hear more from Mia, who is job shadowing. But Captain Marvel, the one theme that's really great, and I'm not giving away any like spoilers or anything, but anybody that anyone's listening or anyone that's sitting in here in this room, the great thing about Captain Marvel is she is a girl and she keeps getting knocked down and she keeps getting back up, and that's like the motif or the spirit behind this movie. And I love when you kind of like encapsulate those things inside your reviews, or you get to get a little bit more subtextual than and that's sad that there's only so much space and they kind of pulled you away from that because you were good at it.
And
you are good at it.
Matter of fact, I think this might be the first review I've done this year, but yesterday's ticket cover was the movie Us, which is really good.
I'm not familiar.
New Jordan Peele.
Oh, it looks
looks
like
amazing.
a mind. No, I don't know if I can do it, man. That's when
his
like
last one. What was the last one called?
Get Out.
Yeah. Oh, awesome, amazing. This one,
it looks. It's almost like Rod Serling-esque a little bit, but it's weird because so what is it? They become. And don't give it away, but the ghost is them.
It's
like the monster is them.
It's a family that looks out their window one day and realizes or sees like four people who are kind of like them, but just a little bit off. And it's one of those movies I'm really looking forward to kind of seeing it a second time because there's certain things that they set up in the beginning of the film that it plays off of as it goes on later. But there are several details I'm going, it's like, okay, there had to have been something in the beginning of this film that I just missed as to like.
Clued you in.
Yeah, like why they, like these people are carrying these like gold scissors. And it's like, okay, there's got to be a scissor reference in that 1986 sequence at the beginning of the movie that I missed that somehow comes into play with this. But
I love movies like that you have to go back and kind of check out. I took a date one time to go see, what was the first big M. Night? I know he made other movies, but the first one with Bruce Willis.
Sixth Sense.
Mm-hmm. And I'm sitting there with the girl I was dating at the time, and she's actually also a Miami graduate, very smart. I think she might have been English too. Molly Mokris, what's up? Shout out, Molly. And she's much smarter than me. And we're watching it, and she leans over, like toes like a total, I'm kind of pissed too. Shame on you, Molly. She leans over and she goes, I think he's dead. And I go, huh? And she goes, And hey, here's a spoiler alert. If you haven't seen Sixth Sense and you're listening to the podcast, first off, shame on you. Secondly, you're going to find out Bruce Willis was a ghost the whole time. And she leans over and she goes, he's dead. And I go,
Rosebud's a sled.
Right. And I go, man, really? And then I walk, yeah. And so then when I went back and saw it the second time, or probably rented it or whatever, I was like, man, there were these little clues that they gave you. I love movies like that.
Well, see, that's one of the other things that I like about the job is that you get, not only do you get to see the movies for free, but you get to see them first. Mm-hmm. And it's before that, like, if you're a movie junkie, you're kind of reading stuff. And even if like a critic is trying to be careful, and I try to be real careful about not giving away too many spoilers, but I may decide, okay, I can say this as long as I don't say B, C, or D. Well, if you're one of those people, it's like, okay, I want to see what the New York Times said, or I want to see what Variety said, or I want to see what this said. Well, maybe he decided to reveal B, but not A, C, or D. And so if you read like more than a couple, you goes like
the puzzle.
I remember Sixth Sense is one of those movies that I didn't see the press screening for. I went to go see it that afternoon that it opened, and just you heard like, oh, it's such a big surprise. And it's like 10 minutes, and I'm going, he's dead. And if I hadn't spent a week hearing all this buildup of like, oh, there's a big surprise, a big shocking twist, I wouldn't have been sitting there looking for it. But so I'm going, it's like, yeah, he's dead.
Yeah. I try to go see all the movies that I really like, the filmmakers that I love, Spielberg, Scorsese. Yeah. Like, I'll be there at 1 o'clock, whatever the first screening is. Same thing usually kind of with Marvel. Like, I'll probably...
It's not because you want to save $3 a ticket that you're there at 1 p.m.
Could be that too. Could be that too. I don't mind saving. I'm frugal. I don't mind saving money. But no, I want to see it because I want to see it first before and this is what I think is happening. Here's a little social commentary on present day. I think this is happening now, especially with like the Star Wars. You talk about built-in audiences with the Marvel films. People are going in with a particular concept ahead of time, or a particular preconception. Is that the right term?
Yeah.
And they are, if it doesn't go the way that they have seen it ahead of time, particularly like The Last Jedi or just a lot of this stuff, there is a tremendous amount of hate out there. And they're going like, these people like...
But they're giving away things while they're arguing
they are
expressing themselves.
And then it's like, it's removing if you're not one of those people like me and you're not able to break away in the first week to go see it, and you can't but help if you're on social media, see some of the stuff, you're like, man, you ruin it. You ruin it for people. You reduce their enthusiasm because it didn't go the way that you wanted. And for everybody that, listen, prodders that are listening to the podcast, I'm about to maybe offend some of you. I'm sorry. But if you said that one of these movies, one of these Star Wars movies, or any of these movies that you had a preconception about ahead of time ruined your childhood, go beep. I'm gonna beep that out. Get out of here, okay? Because that's horse shit.
Right.
Oh, you ruined my childhood. They ruined Luke Skywalker. Get out of here, okay? Or if you wanted it, go create your own, thing. Which is another kind of leads me into this question. I'm like rambling. The beer's good. I want to go back to this because you were an English major and you're a writer. Like you're a reporter, but I mean you're a writer. Yeah. There's a difference. I mean there's people that they're writers physically because they're writing, they're typing it out. You're shaping stories though, and shaping the narrative, and you're editorializing with your opinions in the past about music and all this other stuff. Did you ever? I mentioned Francois Truffaut, New Wave, right? The Cahiers de Cinema. He was a critic. Francois Truffaut, for the non-nerds out there, people who haven't seen any 50s and 60s French New Wave, famous for the 400 Blows and Day for Night, and I don't remember some of the other ones.
Jules and Jim.
Is that Francois Truffaut or is that Renoir?
I'm pretty sure it's Truffaut.
I think you're right. You're right.
I still remember one of my film professors telling a story about taking a date to see Jules and Jim, and she didn't care for it. And he goes, I just could not imagine myself being with someone who didn't get Jules and Jim. And then they never went out again.
Right. I can see. I actually can see that. But did you ever feel like, so Truffaut started off as a critic, and then you turned into a screenwriter and then turned into one of the most influential new wave filmmakers at that particular time. Did you ever feel did you ever think about, like Roger Ebert? Have you ever dabbled in writing or being, not being creative? You are creative.
Yeah.
But,
I have. I mean, I'm not going to lie. I've owned a copy of Final Draft.
Yeah.
That's screenwriting software.
Yeah.
But I also have never, I've like played with ideas and I kind of get to a point where I go, you know what? I think there's something there. This is a movie I really wouldn't want to see. And I mean, I decide it's like, yeah, this might be kind of commercial, but I just didn't get anywhere. I mean, I've got ideas where it's like, I've got a great first scene. I know exactly how it ends, but there's a whole like hour and a half in there you got to fill in between.
That's when you got to call me. We'll go get Modern Methods and figure out that middle. We'll figure the second act out together.
It's like I watched with my daughter. I didn't even start watching. It's like started paying attention because it was so bad. They were watching a movie on Netflix this week called, I think, Another Time. It starred Justin Hartley, who's on This Is Us, which is why they were watching it. It was this like time traveling rom-com. And you could tell there was a writer who had like this, okay, I know exactly how this would be such a great way to end a movie, but he had no idea how to get to the 100 or the 80 minutes to get to that ending. And it was just like an hour into it, they're still trying to create the time traveling thing. And you're going, what? Come on.
Got us to the chase already. So we're pouring beers. That's why there's a little bit of a I always think like when there's a silence, can you run that over? Passing beers throughout the studio.
The best silence is a beer silence.
Amen. I always think about when there's a little bit of a silence, I always think about Pulp Fiction, the conversation between, the uncomfortable silence. I think that's funny. I don't know where I was going. I forgot. Do you ever get to review beers? Do you ever you review?
Review this. Take a sip. We'll give you some garlic
or food. Like, have you ever got into other? Like,
I did food. I
thought you did some food for.
Yeah, we did dining things for when we first started doing the entertainment section. It was like a broadsheet, like the rest of the paper. When I started doing the entertainment section, '87, we went to the tab format that we have today in 1994.
What does that mean, tab format?
It's like the half sheet size.
Gotcha.
And
like the ticket.
Right. Yep. The way ticket is today. Before it was just like the same size as the rest of the paper. And we started doing dining reviews with that, which was fun. It was also a headache. It sounds ridiculous to complain about. You're sitting around going, oh crap, we got to go out to eat somewhere because I need a dining story for this week. But especially like at that point, I had one kid, second one was on the way when we first started doing it. And once you exhaust like the obvious choices in the area, then it became difficult to kind of like figure out where we were doing things. I mean, the paper clearly wanted you focused more kind of on Trumbull County, but you're going, it's like, well, if you're doing dining stuff, you don't need to like at least occasionally touch on like some of the dining experience. Like people here like going to a ball game in Cleveland or going to a concert. They want to go to a restaurant still. And
favorite restaurants during that time? Anything that's still open or closed, or what's new? What's your palate? What do you like? What do you like to eat?
Well, the place, as a matter of fact, because he's not. This place isn't still open. When we first started doing the dining pieces, I know Mark Canzanetta had Pestos.
Oh yeah,
in
Hallam Plaza,
which absolutely loved. I mean,
he's got 16. What's it called now? He has
Bistro 1907.
Bistro 1907, Youngstown, downtown Youngstown.
I mean, I've known Mark since I started doing like the dining thing 25 years ago, and I know I threw a surprise birthday party for my wife for her 40th birthday when he was cooking briefly at Sunrise, and had Mark cater it and did this like incredible like sesame crusted Chilean sea bass and all this stuff that did like a dinner for like 20 people that was incredible. And I know Missy Yeoman, who had Blue Iris,
love that place
downtown, and then had the cupcake shop. My daughter worked for Missy for several years at the cupcake shop. I performed her second wedding a couple years ago.
Oh, really?
I officiated.
Are you? Oh, yeah.
I'm an ordained Judas priest.
Nice. Nice. Me, when you get married someday, a very long time from now.
Yes.
Mia doesn't even date. She's 16. She's a beautiful redhead, and I asked her what she was doing later, earlier before we started recording. Hey, what are you doing tonight? Time you got to get out of here. She goes, I got a dance competition. I said, better or not competition. What is it? A dance.
I'm just going to support my dance.
She's going to. That's good. See, she's other artists supporting artists is very
Dance
important.
is an art.
Heck
Everything.
yeah. And so I said, it better not be a date because we're going to have to find out but so eventually when you get married, Andy could do your services. He's a man of many, many talents.
And I will put as little or as much Big Lebowski content into it as you want.
That's a perfect segue. Yeah. What are some of your favorite films? Because people want to know. We asked some questions on our social media page, but I had people actually text me. No one sent. Well, I don't know why you guys didn't post them on the podcast.
I got a few over here, but when you're done with this one, when you're done with this one, we'll ask a few.
Like, it obviously doesn't have to be like one consecutively 1 to 10 or whatever. Like, just some of your favorite films. What's some of your stuff?
Casablanca is my default answer for my favorite film.
I fucking knew we were kindred spirits. That's my favorite film of all time. That's great. Yes.
My wife worked at the newspaper. The night that we went from being coworkers to a couple she came over to cook me dinner and we watched Casablanca.
Oh yeah, and that's the closer.
Yeah, and our dog passed away last month. My wife's looking for a new dog and was at the Animal Welfare League, and there's a dog named Bogart. So
my dad's dog's name's Bogey. Yeah,
Bogart's about to become our dog after she goes through the prison training program. But why
Casablanca? I just have to ask. I mean, I know why, but so our viewers or
I saw it.
Listeners.
I mean, I'm not sure at what point it kind of became my favorite, but I think I probably saw it for the first time like when I was about in high school, if not younger. It's just the perfect screenplay.
Yeah.
I mean, there's just like
which is all happy accidents, right? You know how that was made. It was
I mean, and that's kind of one of the things that's part of the magic of it is when you know the story behind this. Like they literally had no idea how they were going to end this movie, and whether she gets on the plane or doesn't get on the plane, and someone like just came up with the callback to the earlier line called The Usual Suspects. Again, another movie we just spoiled.
Yeah.
But,
spoiler alert.
Guys are sussy.
But and it's one of those things where it's like every time you watch it, you have a new favorite line.
Yeah.
And Bogart's one of those guys that my father was a fan, and so I got exposed to that and the Maltese Falcon and some things. And my dad isn't like someone who I would have called like the kind of film buff that would have like referred to Truffaut or anything like that. But my dad liked Offbeat Films. I remember, like I said earlier, that MASH was my favorite TV show when I was a kid at 10 years old. Well, when that became huge, they re-released the movie in theaters. My dad was like, okay, this is MASH. This is what you need to see, and took me to see the Robert Altman version. And I remember growing up watching oddball Robert Altman movies like California Split and Long Goodbye on television because my dad told me to watch them, and like the Bogart stuff and some of those things like that I probably wouldn't have sampled at quite that young. Other favorites, Barry Levinson's Diner, and as someone who made a movie about kind of male friendship.
Yeah.
With I mean, I just think that's one of the greatest movies ever made about male friendship.
Yeah. Diner.
One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. John Wayne Western, The Searchers.
Yeah.
Goodfellas, Pulp Fiction.
Goodfellas, excellent.
Singing in the Rain is musical. It's just perfect.
Classics.
Andy's
nailing some classics.
Which nailing them.
Some of them, people. A lot of people will go, the greatest movie of all. Everyone Rosebud. Everyone refers to.
Citizen Kane, obviously.
But is Citizen Kane one of those movies like if Casablanca's on, I'm watching it. If Citizen Kane's on, I may or may not watch it. It's almost like. I put Citizen Kane. It's a fantastic movie, and what he did for the time was amazing. And his innovation of how to tell that story visually, some of the stuff they did had never been done before, and all that jazz. And I feel like I'm dismissing it. I'm just trying to get to the point. And the point is, to me, it's kind of like Schindler's List, which is this amazing film. But I've seen it. It obviously Schindler's List ends in a different way than Citizen Kane does, but kind of in the same not downer, but so if Touch of Evil is on, I will watch Touch of Evil.
Yeah.
Like if it's on, I'm gonna watch it. Citizen Kane, it's harder for me to digest, to sit through, to pick it up in different places. This is just me, but I hearken that also to, people give Spielberg, a lot of people think Schindler's List is Spielberg's best film, which, that an argument certainly can be made for that. I loved it. It was fantastic. It moved me to tears. Every time I watch it, it moves me to tears. It's very hard to watch, though, because of the subject matter. If that's on, it's so great. It's such a great film. I may or may not, but probably not. But if Raiders of the Lost Ark is on, or if Jaws is on,
it's Jaws.
I'm all over that thing, man. It's just like, I think sometimes it's weird too, because there are films that are more, in a artistic sense, maybe better, but there are films that are more fun to watch, and sometimes they take precedence over films that maybe have higher artistic qualities, if you will.
Well, like there are also movies that it's easier to kind of step into regardless of what point you kind of stumble upon them when you're scanning compared to...
Good point.
Because it's like Pulp Fiction and Goodfellas are two movies for me that, like, if I'm channel surfing just looking for something and they're on, it doesn't matter at what point it is. Oh, yeah. And Pulp Fiction's great because there's also like exit points. You're just like, okay, I'm just going to watch the
right.
Okay, when the middle story starts with Bruce Willis, okay, I got to go to bed, but I'll watch until then. Or you'll jump in and watch the last segment. And Citizen Kane, I will grant you, is one of those movies that it's like, if I'm watching Citizen Kane, I want to watch it from the beginning to the end.
Right.
But that's one that I would put in a different class. I agree with you with Schindler's List. Matter of fact, I just purged most of my DVD collection just because they were just taking up space and I wasn't watching them. And Schindler's List is one of the ones that I didn't keep. But I did keep Catch Me If You Can, which I think is like arguably as perfect
gem,
as any Spielberg movie.
Yep.
But I'd say Jaws is one of those things that if I'm flipping around and it's like, okay, I got to hear at least the Indianapolis speech.
Yeah, well, I was just gonna say, if you're not sticking around, for the Robert Shaw, that whole, and they were drunk, I guess. He was an Irish, strapping Irishman. I'm doing a terrible impersonation of him. But,
wow.
Yeah, but he was like, I think they were really drinking and doing that. That's interesting. I love those tales in production, which is part of the reason I also love Casablanca so much. I'm a romantic, and it's so romantic and it's bittersweet. It's got that like Empire Strikes Back ending in a sense. Yeah. And I think that's probably why that's also my favorite Star Wars film. There's some Bogart films though that get like passed over. People talk about like, and I love the Maltese Falcon. The stuff, what is it? It's the stuff that dreams are made of.
Yeah.
But there's one movie that's actually on my bookshelf back there, and it's Sahara.
Oh, okay.
Do you remember that?
Yeah.
Sahara was one, and they made, what's the Brad Pitt film where they're in the tanks? It's actually hanging in our thing. It's where they're in the tanks in World War II, and it was kind of like, it kind of harkens back to Sahara. Sahara was like one of those forgotten Humphrey Bogart films that
Fury?
Fury, yes.
Yeah.
Fury, that's right. Yep, Fury. That people never really bring up when they talk about Bogart, but it's one of his most perfect roles. He plays this tank commander, and they're in they're in North Africa, and it's really great. Anyways,
I love Caine Mutiny.
Mutiny, right.
Harder They Fall, which was I think was his last film.
Yeah,
where he plays a sports writer. Which
Jim, should I run through a few of these questions?
Oh, the questions. Yeah, I'm sorry. Go ahead. Yep.
We've been on this podcast here for a little bit, so you don't have to elaborate too much, but there's some pretty good questions from our prodders out there. A question came across, who created The Ticket? I know when you started the Tribune, it wasn't called The Ticket. Was that your baby? Was it transformed into The Ticket? Was that you?
I certainly had a lot to do with the idea behind it, but the person who deserves the credit for the decision was the managing editor at the time. His name was Lee Gordon, who Lee had worked before he came to the Tribune. Do you remember the National, which was like a daily sports newspaper?
Mm-hmm.
No,
I think I've heard of it. Yeah,
yeah. Well, it was like it was one of those. It was like a real revolutionary idea before its time, and Lee was like in charge of like their agate pages, all their like box scores and all the small type information and things. And Lee had like kind of a great idea for like, it's okay, you need to have this, you need to have like movie listings here, you need to have boxes with everything. I mean, a lot of the stuff that you will see in the ticket today are things that Lee Gordon decided this is how it should be done and kind of what it should look like 25 years ago. It was 94.
If you're listening from out of state or out of area, the Tribune Chronicle at tribtoday.com, you can listen, you can read a bunch of Andy's features, stories and stories and whatnot. Just FYI, I want to get that plug in there because I think we obviously all know each other, and so we sometimes get, you know, you got another one back there? Another question?
Oh yeah. And let's take a look here. This one is, you talk about the movie press review.
Yeah.
Do you actually get the movie sent at home, or do you go on location? Because, you know, do you get that movie a couple days early that only you get to watch in a room? Because
it depends on in most cases, I have to drive to Cleveland.
Okay.
To see a screening in advance, and sometimes those screenings can be. And there used to be a screening room in Cleveland. They haven't used it for years. It was like on kind of like near Beechwood Place. They're in like a industrial complex, nondescript building, and you would sit in a room where there was not much bigger than this, with like a dozen kind of.
They pat you down, make sure you have no video, no photo.
Well, and there they didn't worry about it, and then it was at that point. But you'd watch movies there. Sometimes it would be in a theater during the day, like at Cedar Lee or at Valley View Theater, where the only people in the room will be film critics or writers for area papers. And then you will also see movies that, like, the Tuesday before film opens, they will have like a promotional screening where they want you to see it with a full house. So they, like, one of the radio stations in Cleveland will have given away free passes, which can be a good thing. I mean, I think it helps to see horror movies and comedies in a big full theater. But you're also dealing with people who got a ticket for free and act like idiots and play on their phones the whole time, and
right.
And can be a distraction to the thing.
Definitely.
But I know this week's ticket, I wrote about a documentary on Stiv Bators, who was the lead singer of the Dead Boys, a seminal punk band who grew up in Girard.
Oh, okay.
And the movie's having its world premiere at the Cleveland Cinematheque tomorrow night. That was a case where I got sent a password-protected Vimeo link and watched it on my laptop at home last week before I interviewed the director.
That's cool. Andy has invited me to a handful of screenings, press screenings, or I don't know, they call press screenings? Yeah, press screenings. And I regrettably have never been able to make it because of my production schedule. But please, Andy, invite me to some more, because eventually I want to go.
Oh, I would love to go too. Yeah.
Look at this guy.
Which leads into, real quick, you ever met Bruce Drennan? Bruce Drennan.
I know
Bruce Drennan.
Ducks on the pond.
Yeah, because Bruce Drennan.
I love you, Cleveland.
I love you, Cleveland. He does the sports side, but he's also a movie reviewer.
But he does.
The reason that last question came up, which might have been for me, is because he talks about how he gets these movies and he's got a room at home to watch these movies at times. So I just didn't know if you had like had that room at your house that no wife or no.
I do not. But I know, because matter of fact, I did movie reviews for YTV Channel 33 for a while.
Oh, I didn't know that. We just had Jim Lowboy on
the morning. This was before Jim was the host. It was Len and I think
Rich Morgan.
No, I'm forgetting her name, but there were a couple. I know Patty Earnhardt or Patty Duchaw.
Oh yeah,
time he married Jason
Earnhardt. Yeah,
was there for a while. And then not Gina Marinelli. I can't remember. I'm drawing a blank.
Gina Marinelli is so beautiful. Yeah. Gina, you're the best. I have a crazy story.
Amy Radinovic, that was who.
Oh my gosh, yeah. I forgot about that name.
And although I quickly decided, it's like, I don't want to get up at 5 o'clock in the morning and do this, so I did them on tape, which was okay. And frankly, I only did it because I wanted to try to get into the Broadcast Film Critics Association, so then I get sent all the year-end movies. But they kind of changed their thing. And about the time, I never did end up applying. So,
did you? You'd mentioned going to like some of these like, quote unquote like they're not even called revivalist theaters anymore. You mentioned Cedar Lee. Did you happen to make it to? I wanted to ask you. Did you make it to? Because I've never seen. I've seen all the films we've mentioned. I've seen in the theater, including Casablanca and some other great old movies. I actually got to see, which is hard to see those movies now on print. In the movie theater. Did you get to see Gone with the Wind when it came back just recently? I missed it.
I didn't see it recently. I did see it. You know what? I can't say I can't swear that I saw it in the theater. I may have just saw it on DVD. Or on maybe even VHS, to be honest, the first time I saw it.
We'll wrap up here in a second, but I want to ask you about how important it is to give back. That's been the theme. That'll be the theme of the next couple shows. Because you just recently, like within the last couple of years, became a part of the John F. Kennedy Any Given Child Warren initiative, where you are on the board and helping out promote arts-based learning, arts-based learning. Tell us about that experience. Like, how was that for you? That's not the first board you were on? I mean,
you know what? It really is, because this business has changed. Plus, I've been doing it long enough that I decided that I wanted to kind of try some different things. Where people would say like, "Gee, we'd love to have you like on our board or something." And I would say, it's like, you know what? The day I join your board is the day I have to stop writing about you, because it's a conflict of interest, and I'm much more valuable to you as your contact at the newspaper who knows what your mission is and will make it a priority to write about it, than I am sitting on your board. And I agree with, I believed what I was saying, but it also was a convenient cop-out to like, okay, I don't have to get involved with this stuff. And I think I've been doing this long enough that I kind of wanted to see that other perspective. See what happens on the board instead of ask the board after the fact, okay, what are you guys doing? And so being a part of Any Given Child I think I've maybe contributed a little by doing some of the stories we've done in the paper. And the stories that I've done on Any Given Child run with an editorial note that say Andy Gray is on the board. And so it kind of lets the reader know it's like, I have some role in this organization that I'm writing about, and I think that you need to be as transparent as you can be in that situation. But I think that the insight that I've gained from being a part of the board and kind of seeing how that kind of an operation works has benefited me in ways that and in greater number than what I've done to help them. So,
yeah, for everyone that's, obviously we're familiar with it. Any Given Child is a arts initiative, a learning initiative at the, Warren City Schools. It's a program that the John F. Kennedy Center for the Performing Arts put together, and they put it into a handful, not a handful, but like under 30. I don't know. There's probably added some now.
I think it's 25 now.
25 school districts across the state, across the country. I think we're the only one in the state of Ohio, and we're the smallest school district in the United States. Warren City Schools is the smallest district in the U.S. that was chosen for this, and eventually we're going to have Becky Keck on. Hopefully, Becky, if you're listening, I've invited her onto the show. She's like, I don't know what we're going to talk about. And like, we're going to talk about smarts and Any Given Child because it's important. But Any Given Child is a PK through 8 initiative to expose children to arts programming that they would during the school day that they wouldn't necessarily have. So it's not like an after school program, it's a during the school program. And Andy has been instrumental in that. And it's actually interesting to see, you've been a fantastic contributor to it. It's actually interesting to see someone with your knowledge and skill set who can also be a beacon, a voice for that through the newspaper, but also while you're there giving insight into like just simple things. Like I've always written my own press releases, and I don't know what the heck I'm doing. And so we're writing press releases, and Andy, is saying, well, you should put it like this and phrase it like this. I'm like, oh, wow, that's really cool. That's, it's like some insider information. Yeah. So I think it's been fantastic. And I love to see when people, working professionals who are able to take their skill set and interject it into nonprofits that benefit the community. And so it's been fantastic too. I'm happy to have served on that board with you. And thank you for doing that. I love it. I love that you're involved in that. It's been a fantastic, man. I had a great time here. Is there anything that we didn't cover that we should talk about? Is there any way, you can come back another time, sometime?
Sure.
I want to get really nerdy about movies.
Yeah. At any time, yeah.
Yes.
And like saying, the one thing I would just stress for anyone listening, especially the people that live here, is that there are so many opportunities like that people just don't take advantage of. I mean, when you see the work that's been done, like in the alley that's right behind us here with Dave Grohl Alley, and with what Trumbull Art Gallery has done. And I know you're on the board with Trumbull Art Gallery.
Not anymore, but I was.
I know you were.
I was on the board there. Yeah.
And
Packard, the Packard Foundation.
Yeah,
I'm on the W. Packard Foundation.
With the Packard Foundation, what's going on at Packard Music Hall? What's going to be going on at the Robbins Theater? I mean, would you see what's happening in Youngstown right now? That there are a lot of projects that really deserve your support, and it gets frustrating sometimes to go to events in downtown Warren and see the same 30 people.
Yeah,
and that circle needs to expand, and you need to kind of support the things that are here. And there are a lot of opportunities here that there are places where you can shine if you want to.
Yeah. And
take it if you just take advantage of it. Either if you want to be an audience member, if you want to be something more.
Don't talk about it. Andy Gray is saying, don't talk about it, be about it. Put the time and energy in. It's funny because we had this conversation at Sunday dinner a couple weeks ago with my cousin, and we were talking just about just people in general. And, we said, everyone says like, oh, you got to support Warren and the downtown and this and that. But yet at the same time, they don't ever show up for any of the things, but it's like paying lip service. And so I love when people like yourself who have a vested interest, but also who have, like, you're putting skin in the game.
Yeah.
You're putting your time, talents, and energy into something that's giving back to the community. So that's awesome. Andy, I loved having you on today, man. I could keep the microphone hot and continue talking about movies. We could probably have one show just all about movies. But until the next time, is there a place where people can follow your writing and your work? Do you want to tell them that and see if they can contact you or whatever? That's up to you.
I can say the best place is every Thursday in the Tribune Chronicle. And like I say, our website is tribtoday.com, TRIBTODAY. Most of the stuff that I write either gets posted under the ticket section on the entertainment page or on the website, or these days I do a little bit of everything some days, and those stories run like in the news section. So,
Andy Gray, awesome having you on today, man. Totally appreciate it. We're going to finish this beer off camera. Thank you for joining us on the podcast.
Thank you.
Until the next time, folks, stay electrified and keep on prodding. We hope you enjoyed that episode of the podcast with our good friend Andy Gray from Gray Areas, from The Ticket, and from the Warren Tribune Chronicle. He's famous for all those things. We also want to mention thank you for listening. If you've been following us, if this is your first episode, welcome. We've got some other ones you can go back to, and we're going to have some new ones coming out. Our next one, I'm very excited about. Our next one is with a friend of ours who we just made, who is a authority of sorts on CBD. You guys know what CBD is? You're going to after the next episode. CBD is the non-psychoactive component of cannabis. Not THC, that's the stuff that makes you feel funny. CBD. They've been using it to treat certain chronic conditions, pain, and pain associated from like arthritis or fibromyalgia or things of that nature. CBD. Our next prodding will be a CBD authority of sorts, and so we're very excited about that. And please share the podcast.net, created and designed by MDI Studios. Check out Brandon Giovanni's MDI Studios, mdistudios.com. Thank you for your sponsorship, sir. And as always, we are sponsored by Two Ticks and the Dog Productions. We do all kinds of stuff, but we specialize in television, radio, web, and on-screen cinema advertising, both designing the plans, creating the creative, making the production, producing the production, if you will, from A to Z. We take you from step 0 all the way to step, 100. And we've got a fairly successful track record. I'm underplaying a little bit because I don't want to be over here self-serving. Please check us out. We're at twotixandthedog.com. You can find us on Facebook. You can check out some of our work on YouTube. And we love working with people and helping enhance their business. helping them gain top-of-mind awareness, helping them reach the right reach and frequency and get as many impressions as they can. We always say, I always tell clients, my innate ability, get more people in the door, get more people to your website so you can grow your business. And I always kind of think of myself as like a little bit of economic development. I always try to say, I try to make $1,000 look like 10. And we've been fairly successful at doing that with some clients over the years. Some of you whom we'll also have on in future podcasts. But until then, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for listening. Stay electrified.